There we go. We are live.
So tell me when you would like me to start, Lisa.
You may begin.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this keynote moment. It's very good of you to join. I love technology, and I have grown in skill set over the last 2 years in technology. But it is wonderful when it works, and when it doesn't work, it presents us with new challenges. But all I can do is empathize with our young people, with our children who have adopted very well over the last year and a half to 2 years in their learning and in their school career, and they've adopted very well. So I can see my PowerPoint, but I can't see you. So I feel like I'm talking to a screen, which is fine. So the title for this keynote speech is in the front there. And basically, I believe that it is time to grasp the curriculum Nettle to the next new in education. And the term next new is something that I thought of because I kept hearing about the next normal in education. And I became a little bit concerned about what the next normal actually meant. And when I spoke with other leaders in education and teachers as well, they were constantly asking for new technology, educational technology to deal with and to respond to our issues with online learning, our blended learning, and so forth. They were legitimate questions. They were legitimate requests. But my concern, of course, was that they were trying or attempting to miss this opportunity to grasp the curriculum Nettle and just try to do the old in a new way, to use some kind of technology to continue, but we're just doing it in a different modus operandi. And I did become kind of concerned on this. If you take a look at the picture, I'm sure some of you could come up with an understanding of what the picture means. So if you can tell by my accent, I am from Belfast. I am from Northern Ireland. And it is there that I went to school. I was educated there. And I then went off to university. And I then became a teacher, which was my drive and passion. I then settled down to teach in a lovely place in Kent. The place was called Tunbridge Wells. It was a really lovely place, and I did cut my teeth in terms of teaching and learning there, particularly through my early professional development. I then returned to Belfast, and there I spent 15 years teaching and going through the management of schools and so forth. But when I returned Belfast and our society was going through change, it was going through massive change. And the change, of course, was peace, post conflict society. And education was a major stakeholder in this reshaping of society, of building peace. So I taught in a Catholic school, and across from this wall, in the other side of the community, we had colleagues. I had colleagues and friends who were teaching in the state sector or the Protestant sector. You know? So if anyone is aware of conflict situations around the world, you will have an idea of what I'm talking about. Same curriculum was being taught and so forth, but subtleties were taught differently. So it's whilst teaching that I began to question, for the first time, curriculum. I, through teacher training college and through my PGCE, my NQT, my early professional development, I kind of tried to be the best teacher I could be. I listened to my heads of department, to my mentors, teacher tutors, and I didn't delve deep into curriculum or into any kind of knowledge base. I did what I was told. I learned to do my schemes of work, plan my lessons, and so forth. However, after a few years, I began to realize that the curriculum itself was not changing with society. It actually potentially could be holding our society back. And from that place or space in my heart and the desire to see a post conflict society and a reconciled community in Northern Ireland, I began to look at curriculum. And in doing so, I discovered that actually many of the subtleties had not changed. For instance, in the area of history, the same curriculum was being taught, the content, but it was taught differently. It was taught in a way of a them and us. And I thought this will not help our society move forward and bring our community, our children, our students together as citizens, as reconciled citizens. And that's how I cut my teeth into curriculum. I was offered an opportunity through Horace Manchester in the University of Oxford. They have a little institute there called the Farmington Institute. And they then gave me some funding and so forth. And I then became a research fellow or scholar with them. And I began to redesign curriculum in Northern Ireland, particularly in areas of contention. I kind of grasped the nettle. And sometimes it was unpleasant because at times when you speak to power in society, it can be difficult. But conversations were gentle, but they had to be real. And so, in grasping that nettle in Northern Ireland, I developed a skill set. And the skill set was to really question the foundations of curriculum and so forth. Also, I was teaching at the same time, although I was released for 1 day a week for my research and to redesign curriculum. I also then was very passionate about inclusive education, and I trained as a Senko as well. And whilst training as a Senko, I developed uh, a skill set in methodology. And the methodology that really I enjoyed the most was a methodology called UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. And if you are aware of UDL, it was developed, it was a concept of a guy called Ronald Mace. And Ronald Mace was an architect in New York. But unlike the architects of his time in the 60s and so forth, he was a wheelchair user. And before him, architects were making their name through iconic design and so forth. But there was no impact research done, or no need to do it in terms of who needs access to a building. It the architects just looked at, actually, let me build and design an iconic building that will, I can put my name, I can become a famous architect for that. And there are many buildings around New York and many parts of the world like this. But Ronald Mace courageously challenged the architects to research who needs access to this building. Uh, is it accessible at all levels? Is it safe? And so forth. And as a result of his courage, impact research became a necessary thing in architecture. In fact, it is now across all industry. A lot of research is done into impact and so forth. But whilst researching in this whole area of curriculum in Northern Ireland, I realized actually curriculum, curriculum research, and so forth had not progressed in the way that other industries have. Curriculum, for the most part, was uh, conducted remotely. Uh, it did not have and do impact research. What kind of children, what kind of profile of student will uh, avail of or need to uh, avail of this curriculum and so forth. Hence, then the curriculum became a set, as we know what it is, it just became a set document and so forth. Then we teachers became trained at retrofitting. I call it retrofitting this thing. Some people call it differentiation and so forth. The curriculum, no impact on, designed remotely by curriculum designers, given to us. Our job, of course, as teachers, take it, look at children, try and fit them into it, refit them, differentiate, make it work in some kind of way, and so forth. I then realized that this was wrong. This should not be and could not be the way. Of course, my point of looking at curriculum design, and the reasons behind it, and so forth, was to have curriculum and education serve and bring society forward into peace, into reconciliation, and so forth. But I did develop a degree of skill set in the whole area of inclusion as well. And I used the methodology of SEN and I applied it in this whole area of curriculum design for post-conflict societies. So I grasped that nettle uh, in terms of curriculum. And I did so as a teacher. And I did so as someone who wanted to actually uh, change our education system. And I just include my TED talk, which I did do in China a few years ago, in and on this whole area of curriculum development when I was over there doing some consulting. So I come to you and I speak to you humbly as a teacher. I am currently a principal or an executive principal here. That's a recent appointment as a senior principal at MISC schools in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, I looked at, and just like Northern Ireland, when we changed from, and the COVID-19 hit us, it hit us head on as educationalists, as educators, as teachers. And I did hear the term the new normal versus the next normal and so forth. But the statistics of the amount of children who have been impacted, and teachers, of course, also, the impact on global education, the numbers keep renewing themselves, and it is a good thing to keep ourselves up to date. But the numbers I have simply are that almost, and it's staggering, almost 26 million higher educational students, those in third level, and 55 million K to 12 students have been impacted by this move from from face to face, synchronous to asynchronous to blended and so forth. The only thing and the only conclusion that I can come to is that education has changed. We have gone to a new normal. But I really believe that we need to move beyond the new normal, grasp the curriculum, and I won't mention assessment yet, and move to the next normal. So whether we are synchronous, asynchronous, blended model, or we're using educational technology, many people did move to an adaptive learning framework. And many teachers, many leaders did so very successfully, and others struggled due to resources around the world. And I believe that this adaptive approach, again within context, is the next normal. If I reflect on my own practice as principal here, I basically transitioned using the power of three. That is to maintain what we could, adopt what we needed to adopt, and innovate where we needed to innovate, and not be afraid to innovate, to grasp the curriculum Nettle. And I will explain more uh, through the talk what we actually did in practice. So, what did we do? We maintained what we could, and we were using a wonderful AI technology known as SentryTech. Through quick impact research, we realized actually this was an excellent AI tool that we could maintain, and it would be seamless and painless for our students. We adopted, of course, most notably, our learning spaces were adopted, and students had to adopt to their learning space as well as teachers as well. And we innovated to give the students the best experience that they could have. I recall last May, I was writing my usual, I sat down in the evening to write my usual cover letter for the end of year report for my students. And I read the reports and so forth. And I thought, this report does not state the growth areas that our children, and I'm presuming your children as well, in fact, children all around the world, this report is not reflecting on the growth that they have come through, that they have developed into what they became as a result of their experience. And so, what I decided to do in my report card, I'm going to record and expose what is not in the report card, but I know were areas of growth for our students. The first thing that I did note was adaptive learning. Our students and your students adjusted. They adjusted better sometimes than teachers. They excelled in responding to change. In fact, their ideas were flowing when we spoke with them around which way, uh, because we did kind of do some kind of survey with our students as well. They adopted to their new learning environment. In fact, I think that is the next challenge, would be to help them to adopt post-pandemic into uh, coming back to school in a synchronous manner. Their engagement in intellectual opposition was extremely high. And I noted that in my cover letter as well. One thing that I did notice as well, the management of stress that our young people exhibited was extraordinary. Of course, we had a lot of students who needed help and support, as well as adults, as well as teachers and leaders also. The fourth thing that I did record and expose in the report card or my letter was the growth mindset that students showed. And of course, this growth mindset, in my view, uh, creates a love of learning, a resilience that is essential for all great accomplishments. And I use the word there, courage. And when I get to the second part of this keynote speech, I'm going to reflect on any word that I use, and I'm going to critically apply it to myself and expose, well, these are wonderful words, wonderful concepts, but what did you do as an educator, as a leader? How did you adapt to the situation? So, adaptive learning and this whole area of employing ed tech and so forth is not a singularly a silver bullet. Okay, it is valuable, and it is admirable the way teachers and leaders have adopted, and it is a tool in our armory as educators. So, the current situation, education challenge, of course, should provoke further thinking. Are we wanting to adopt from the new normal and bring children back to school to do the same thing, same curriculum, same assessment pattern, same reporting? Or are we going to take this courageous time, this inspiring time, to provoke new thinking and be courageous in curriculum design thinking? And I go back to, if anyone's from the UK, post war, the 1944 Act of Education. If you look back to the context of the innovative approaches, even back then, to that Education Act, I think we need to go back to that innovative approach. And you think about the developments, excuse me, in the world that have taken place since that. So if we accept the adaptations that we have as educators developed, are we in danger? And I'm going to be a little bit critical here. Just like the use of an IEP, and I'm coming back to my Senko days, of accepting an inflexible curriculum. And that's what I discovered when I looked and began to research curriculum uh, for my research scholarship at Oxford, that it was inflexible. We got and we developed IEPs to help children into the inflexible. And I thought there has to be a way that we change this, that we begin with the child and we make the curriculum flexible. And that's the way we personalize the curriculum. Or are we simply going to, if we can come back to school in September, in a face-to-face way, are we just going to genuinely replicate what we've always done, maybe in a newish way, but because we've got some new IT infrastructure? We all accept, and I hope we all accept, that children do not grow by being measured, you know? Or are we going to prioritize AI over skills development, ed technology? Or are we in danger of repeating this whole assessment exam tail, wagging the curriculum or the curricular dog? I don't believe that we should honestly, as educators, go back to the way we've always done things, but please grasp the curriculum nettle for change and use it. And I will challenge myself to, in front of you, to show you how I did this, how I am doing it, because it does take courage. You know, we don't have to look too far to look at and to be inspired. Professor Dylan Williams, if you're not too sure, uh, his work on modern assessment, absolutely fantastic. Professor Deborah Eyre on high performance learning, AI in the form of Sentry Tech, and so forth. Charles Fidel and his Center for Curriculum Design on 21st Century Skills. All fantastic, inspirational uh, leaders, thought leaders. And I think we should look to them in terms of not returning to the next normal as such. I think adaptive learning and all of the stuff that we have been involved in this past year and a half to 18 months has been valuable. But I think we should be that wee bit more, that little bit more radical in the way I was in Northern Ireland by challenging curriculum writers, by speaking to power almost. And let's approach curriculum reform, assessment, and accreditation over the next while. And let's be courageous, please. Around the world, this is a global conference, around the world, innovation in education is plain to see. But I think we must seize the spirit uh, of renewal, reshape education for a post pandemic era. It won't be the same, and it should not be the same. I mentioned the 1944 Act of Education, and again, that's 20 odd years ago. What did it do? It gave new educational opportunities to children of its time, and it needed to because they were going through very serious dark times. Not too far on away from a pandemic, a global pandemic. It raised the leaving age of children, and it gave secondary education for the first time, free education across the different grammar, modern and technical colleges and so forth. So for me, in 2021, this pandemic, as a teacher, as a teacher leader, as someone trying to grasp the curriculum nettle, has brought many interesting and thought-provoking ideas about education to the surface. This whole idea of online blended learning, can it work? Does it work? Teaching is a skilled job, and I think parents and the world through this period of time have reevaluated the profession, the vocation of teaching, and I think are showing that little bit more gratitude for our skill set. Of course, the gap between rich and poor countries, the digital divide became very apparent. And of course, to mention nothing of the mental health of children, and of course, our teachers, and of course, the exam system being very fragile, as we witnessed over this past 2 summers. So, my experience has challenged me to, just like it did in Northern Ireland, to provoke a new way of thinking about curriculum globally as well as here within the kingdom. And I would almost encourage that we do not go back to the new normal. So, what are the challenges ahead? The challenges for me are clear. You know, I think this whole 18th 2 year kind of period have shown fault lines in terms of digital access across the world. Uh, the privileged versus the non privileged, and the essential nature of being connected for learning. The exams fiasco have genuinely, an assessment had been a challenge for all of us in education. And there's been great debates and solutions around this. Again, I mentioned that children do not grow from being measured. So assessment needs to serve our learning. And assessment before the pandemic was not, in my view, serving learning to the maximum in terms of being formative. So, where can we look for inspiration? I did mention uh, Charles Fidel, Perea Lacani in Century, Professor Dylan Williams, and so forth. But also, there are leading schools out there globally who are shaped by this analysis. And I hope that the school that I am principal in is shaped by this analysis. There, our curriculum is not knowledge content driven, but it is our bedrock is STEAM subjects. But we are equally focused on growth mindset, on learning skills, collaboration, character development, and meta learning. So within this strong framework, there is room, of course, for personalized, flexible curriculum, personalized learning. And I replaced, when I was Senko a long time ago, I replaced IEPs with PLPs, personalized learning plans rather than IEPs. Self directed, experiential, project based learning. Very, very real learning, developing skills and dispositions in this fast changing world. Global mindedness, service as well. You know, one of our focus as a school is leadership development, and I will explain some of those developments uh, that took place over the last 18 months within our school. Service at the heart of leadership and citizenship globally. These approaches are not theoretical, and I will explain how they're not theoretical as what we do here in school. So I'm going to ask a few questions, if you don't mind. I'm not expecting any written answers, but please challenge yourself if you are listening. You know, what does it genuinely mean to be a creative and innovative teacher? What would creative and innovative teaching look like? And is there a measure for it? What kind of data metrics or matrix would you use? A quality assurance framework. So, encouraging creative and innovative teaching will require rethinking. It really require grasping the curriculum nettle and asking very difficult questions and being creative and being uh, courageous. These questions are questions I asked several of my teachers during our induction week, as in last week. What motivates you as a teacher? Why does the quality of teachers matter? And how do we get better teachers? I would rephrase that last one and say, how do we become better teachers? In terms of redesign teacher training, I think this is essential. Not only should we have and grasp the curriculum nettle, but we simultaneously should grasp how do we design teacher training, particularly in light of uh, this past 2 years. 3 years ago, if I was interviewing for a teacher, the skill set, what I was looking for on paper, but also exposed through interview and so forth, it's so different. It's vastly different from what I am looking for today. The flexibility, the innovation, the incentive, the resilience, the grit, but also still having the heart of a teacher and concern for young people. They're higher up my list now when I interview for teachers. What do teachers know in terms of subject knowledge, subject pedagogy, general pedagogy? And what do they understand about learning and how students learn in an adaptive situation, in a pandemic, in a crisis? I think also building a confident and active profession is very important. Having our teachers involved in research, action research, putting a framework in for teachers to do this. And I will show you how I am living this a as a principle. I think expanding teachers' view of possibilities and help them grasp the essentials of different approaches to become partners with leaders, with universities, with curriculum designers, so that they have a voice in the strategies, in the standards to meet the needs of their pupils. I also think that leadership is very, very important. My style of leadership has changed drastically. It has changed vastly. And I've developed a new skill set as well as my staff in terms of teachers. And we should pay much more attention to the kind of nurturing and leadership identification. I think the skill set around curriculum, around learning, around assessment, around reporting, around being a thought leader, a design leader, now for me has become much, much more important, excuse me, much, much more important than the looking after the budget. All very, very important things. But this kind of pedagogical depth is much, much more important for leaders if we are to grasp the curriculum nettle. Teaching and learning has changed, and I've identified how that has changed. Excuse me. Now, the challenge for me is to pour my soul in front of you. Enough theory. Where is my courage as a leader? What have I done? How am I taking these keywords like courage, research, teacher training, and what am I doing about it? How am I making the change? How am I a change maker? Around 12 months ago to 13 months ago, I started to do research internationally. Now, to protect the school's reputation and name and so forth, because all of this was done with permission and copyright, I began to look at the most innovative schools around the world. I put months of research into this. I began to benchmark innovation, uh, outcomes for students, assessment, and so forth. And if anyone is interested in that kind of research, please feel free to get in contact with me. I didn't stop there with the research and the benchmarking. I then further reduced the schools that cross referenced the vision and mission and the ethos of my current school. And I developed case studies with those schools. And then I kind of cross referenced in those schools where they uh, came into our emphasis on innovation, our emphasis on personalized learning, and so forth. And then, as you see on this slide here, I then reduced those schools to at least 18, and then I began speaking and working in partnership with them to create uh, and again to form professional learning communities to help each other through this, to maintain innovation and to grasp the curriculum nettle. And I will show you what I have done here in this school. I then searched internationally for curriculum partners, people who could genuinely come in, who had the skill set to come in and help me with this innovation. Now, if you take a look here, where are we currently with our program? We are about 3.5 out of the 4. And in 2 years' time, I'm hoping that I will be presenting to you or to whoever an iconic, a unique curriculum pathway that will be unique and so forth and well benchmarked. As well as doing this, I had to redesign, and I did redesign our key stage 4 curriculum. I looked at our young people who are 14 to 16, and we cannot keep putting them through this cognitive, content-led pathway. So I decided to look at it, and I decided to redesign it. And again, this was a 12-month research project, and I benchmarked it with universities like MIT and so forth. And when I presented the graduate profile that would come from these kind of curriculum pathways, the feedback was enormously positive because I want the student to actually be central to empowering chart their own pathway and careers. And I'll show you how I'm doing this. So, as I say, this was a saying for me, and it is passionate, and it goes back to my training in Northern Ireland. We must fit the curriculum to the child and not the child to the curriculum. Okay? Uh, we literally start with the child, and the curriculum will spiral around them. Our curriculum that we designed for the 14 to 16, and I'm in the middle of designing the 16 to 18, will be personalized. The language of future, experiential, creative, and so forth. And how will I do this? I completely have been bold, and I've reduced the cognitive load. In any school between 14 to 18, what would you see? What would you witness? What would your eyes tell you, your ears, and so forth, and your conversations with your teachers? What would a timetable of the average 14 to 16-year-old child look like? Well, from morning to evening or to the afternoon when they go home and off to their extracurricular activities and so forth, you will find them filled full of classes, designed content, and so forth, GCSEs, IGCSEs, or MYP, full of content aiming towards something, mostly certificates in the hand. And then we count that, and this is how we judge success. I've completely thrown that out. I've broken our Key Stage 4 curriculum into 4 core areas. Of course, our first one is academic. And our children will not study more than 5 IGCSEs. Through our interdisciplinary approach, they will experience, of course, all subject areas. We have our national identity core, which, of course, will be our Arabic language, our Islamic studies, and so forth. Now, that makes up for 50% of the time. What will happen for the rest of the time? They will have internship. And what I mean by that is 25% of their time, they will be out of school. They will be in working with employers, developing skill set, developing real experiential uh, skills that I will monitor, I assess, and I will record and put into a portfolio. And of course, leadership. This leadership core is a core that I developed with Sandhurst in the UK. It is a core that is and will make up 25% of the time. Again, we've started this, in fact, last week. I have worked with accrediting partners who will accredit this separately, a level 2, a level 3, through CMI in London, the Chartered Management Institute. I then take all of these together, and again, this is my next set of work, and I'm challenging NARAC and other accrediting bodies who accredit qualifications and skills and give international weighting to allow this new way of thinking, of educating, of grasping the curriculum nettle, so that children don't leave with things in their hand, because the pandemic has shown us, even before it wasn't working, and it's what they become. When I was explaining this to a few educators recently, a tutor spoke to me and said, "But what will this get the child at the end?" And this was an experienced educator. My response is, "Your question is wrong. It's what they will become. It's who they will become, the skills that they will develop, not what's in their hand. Do they have 11 of them, 10 of them, and so forth?" And that's the difference between the Key Stage 4 pathway that I've designed and the usual pathway, which I consider to be the factory. The factory where you go to your English, for your English, you go to wherever, and we judge success. We measure the school by the amount of certificates that we hold in the hand. We are firmly rooted, of course, in our national identity subjects. That means that because we are project based, all projects and they're very real and substantial projects, begin with our Islamic studies, where they study the ethics of the program, who will benefit from our research, our project. Is it self serving? Will it serve the community? Will it serve the nation? Will it serve globally? And so forth. And once the project is finished, they return to the Islamic Studies Department where an ethical evaluation will take place. And we have paperwork and performa and so forth for this, where honest questions are asked. Is your research honest? Is it real? Uh, did you have any shortcuts and so forth? Very, very central, and we are firmly rooted to our national identity here in the kingdom. This leadership is a new curriculum, and it is again accredited. And I worked in partnership with Sandhurst. Now I understand many people will be asking, but sure, the Sandhurst is a working third level military organization, but they also have a, a training partnership as well with many second level institutions. And this is a unique pathway that we have developed with a group called the IDG. And what will happen with our young people is that they will start in grade 9 and they will look at team, school, okay? And then they go to local, then they go to national, and then they go to international. And all of our children will travel during this time and experience leadership at, at school, local, national, and international level, attending the Houses of Parliament, to the US as well, to the UN. Okay, because that is the unique one of the unique ethos or ethics of our school is that we develop leaders for the future. We develop skill set, as I mentioned, real world experiential learning. And we literally have a 9-year-old in our school. He's come, as he reminded me, I'm almost 10. He is just completing 6 weeks of an internship in a 3D printing factory. And there he is learning the skills of 3D printing at 9 going on 10. Now, we are keeping a digital passport for these young people. Now, can you imagine from 9 to 10, 10 to 11, right up to he graduates and moving on to third level, what his skill set will really be like? How he really can sell himself to a third level institution. In fact, through our partnership with our third level institutions, they're already looking at this pathway. They're already asking, you know, we want to get involved. We want to help develop this graduate profile for the future. And the profile, of course, is that they're passionate learners, critical and creative thinkers, globally minded, and so forth, self directed. That is one thing the third level institutions fed back to us. The resilience level, this being able to actually see through difficult times without, depending on staff within third level and so forth. What about teachers? I did mention about teacher training. I did mention uh, about the need to rethink teacher training. This is our what we call our MISC educator profile. This is what we expect from them when they apply to our school. So what I'm doing at the minute is I've founded a teacher training college, and it's within the school, and we're calling it the Academy, Teacher Training Academy. And we are going to fast track the future. Not only are we redesigning and rethinking curriculum, grasping that nettle, but simultaneously we are looking at developing our own certificates, our own uh, teacher training diplomas, bachelors, masters, even right up to doctorates. And right now we have 2 staff members starting a postdoctoral diploma with our partners. All of our staff will be trained through this academy into a new way of thinking, of grasping this curriculum Nettle, and genuinely developing a 21st century and even 22nd century skills rich uh, curriculum, preparing, genuinely preparing. And one of my criticisms of educational conferences and so forth is we do a lot of talking. I honestly, I did do some talking at the beginning. I hope in the second half of this keynote speech, I have honestly showed you and exposed that I've walked the walk. I am grasping the curriculum nettle. I am training and retraining teachers and rethinking teacher training, professional development, and so forth, and making it very, very real and credible with our third level partners. And these are the key words that I used: design and give space for teachers to be creative and innovative. I'm going to do this through our academy. Courage and confidence. Our teachers are central to our curriculum, unique curriculum development. Fitting the curriculum to the child. This is something that I used in my TED talk. A flexible curriculum, not inflexible. We fit it around children. We design for success. And we do this using personalized learning pathways. Teaching and learning has changed. Therefore, we have changed. We will build a confident and active profession through a new way of teacher training, through professional development, and so forth. And again, redesigning the whole area of teacher training. And I finish really by looking at Elon Musk. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, then you are not innovating. It is about taking risks. I think we as educators must and should be courageous. We must look at the next new, which I hope that in part, I'm helping to create for us as teachers, but it is a partnership. And again, I do so humbly as a teacher. As a teacher, my passion for curriculum and getting a curriculum fit for its context for me is very, very important. As I go back to my early days in Northern Ireland, right through to today here in the Kingdom, helping to redesign this whole way, this whole new innovative way of looking at curriculum, of innovating, teacher training, and most importantly, of being courageous and grasping that nettle. So I will stop sharing here and I will open up to some questions if anyone has questions.
If anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat on the app, or you can also drop them in the chat on the live stream. So far, we've just got some comments. So feel free to ask your questions. We will remain here for another couple of minutes to field your questions. Just have comments from thank you for an amazing session. Truly action in practice. What a presentation, an outstanding program. Bravo, thank you. And it's an amazing skill set. Someone wrote, this curriculum, I guess, fits quite well with the theory of Dr. Gardner and the 9 intelligences. Each child is intelligent in his or her own way. So we're happy to field your questions. Feel free to keep your comments and questions coming. Even after the session ends, you can drop your comments and your questions in the chat on the app, and we can offer answers as and when we are available. Thank you so much, Dr. Terence Brady, for a very insightful presentation, grasping the curriculum nettle, and I hope it has inspired the many educators who have tuned in to do exactly that. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me, Lisa.
You're welcome.